We will now consider log number 4933 by Mr. Courtney. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The clerk has an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the amendment without objection? The reading of the amendments dispensed with. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut for the purpose of explaining his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this amendment would prohibit funds being made available by this act from being used for the purpose of modifying an aircraft acquired from a foreign source for use as an executive lift aircraft or for transferring such aircraft to a non-governmental entity. This provision is in response to the President Trump's unilateral decision to accept a Boeing 747 from Qatar to serve as a replacement for the current Air Force One aircraft, the VC-25A. And again, I just want to preface my remarks by reminding my colleagues on the committee that we have direct jurisdiction over the Air Force One program. It actually falls under the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee, which is maybe a surprise to some, but the Projection Forces jurisdiction includes all airlift, including executive airlift. And back in 2018, this committee, during President Trump's first term, authorized the purchase of 2 Boeing 747 aircraft that the company originally built as commercial passenger planes for an airline that went bankrupt. The cost of the upgrades and retrofitting for these 2 planes to replace the Air Force One fleet, which admittedly is definitely old at this point, was totaled $3.9 billion. The work included stripping the plane's interior down to the studs, hardening the plane's defenses, installing encrypted communications technology, and building out space for what is essentially a flying command and control center, not just for our nation's military and intelligence agency, but the entire federal government. So since then, that $3.9 billion figure has already been exceeded because, again, of a number of change orders, and one of the subcontractors that was doing the interior work went bankrupt, and Boeing, which is the general contractor, had to come up with a plan to replace that work and do it in-house. So again, when the administration has been trying to explain this proposal to have a third 747, which again is pre-owned, it already has an interior that was built out for one of the members of the Qatari kingdom. Basically the same process that we just saw or is underway right now with the 2 planes that were acquired back in 2018 has to happen again. That will involve stripping the interior down to the studs, hardening the plane's defenses, installing encrypted communications technology, and building out space for what is essentially a flying command and control center. When the Secretary of the Air Force testified before our committee recently, he again gave an astounding comment that work will only cost $400 million, even though we already have a real-life experience with the same process of retrofitting a plane that's been pre-built for another purpose as an Air Force One plane, which has cost basically $2 billion per unit. So again, according to Secretary Menk, the money is going to be transferred from the Sentinel program, one of the triad programs, and that diversion is going to be apparently enough to cover the cost of this $400 million price tag, which magically is somehow going to accomplish the same work that the $2 billion figure that is still underway and happening today. So back in May, the acting Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, Darlene Costello, testified before our subcommittee, and she basically has given an estimate of delivery of 2028, and they are working with Boeing, according to her, to actually move that schedule to the left and have the plane achieve a delivery date in 2027. So again, we're being asked by the administration to overlook a unilateral decision without Congress's approval, with no appropriation that has been lawfully given to the administration to approve a third Air Force One aircraft, which supposedly is going to be delivered before the 2 planes that have been underway for retrofit since the first Trump administration And again, with no indication about how that's going to be safe for a president and is going to be capable of really taking on all the different missions and countermeasures and protection that, of course, the Air Force One plane has to be for the President of the United States. Now, there's a whole host of other reasons why this acquisition, I think, is troubling members of Congress and people, again, who have been commenting on this. The constitutional prohibition in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, that bans any official from accepting gifts or emoluments from another government without approval of Congress. So again, Congress hasn't even come close to approving this gift. And again, Congress has not come even close to authorizing or appropriating the funds for this gift. It's just all happening with no transparency, and again, in complete contradiction to the real-life experience that we've seen play out with the two 747s that were purchased back in 2018. Again, I would urge my members to support this amendment.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes himself. Maintenance of the current Air Force One is increasingly difficult, which challenges the readiness and availability of these aircraft. Modification and delivery of the future Air Force One is delayed until at least 2028. We need a capable aircraft for the President to support his responsibilities as Commander-in-Chief. The proposed 747 can provide that capability well before the current Air Force One replacement. I urge all members to oppose the unnecessary political amendment. Does any other member seek recognition? Gentleman, Mr. Bell from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding the emoluments clause prohibiting any person holding office from accepting gifts, titles, or other benefits from foreign states, as an attorney, there's this concept of the appearance of impropriety. And what I would suggest is that there is a clear appearance of impropriety when the President of the United States accepts a gift and uses taxpayer dollars to retrofit or what have you with this particular gift. Qatar is not just any nation, it's a strategic player in a volatile region, and allowing any president to accept gifts for personal benefits undermines our national security and the credibility of U.S. foreign policy, but also the confidence, it undermines the confidence that the American people have in their leaders to act independently and not be influenced by foreign powers. Accepting any and repairing luxury assets from foreign actors without proper oversight raises these serious ethical questions. And I think that should be beneath this body. We should, and whoever the president is, we're going down a slippery slope, and we do not, and I would challenge my colleagues that if this president was a Democrat, President Biden, how would they feel about the president accepting and using taxpayer dollars for gifts of this magnitude? I would allocate the remainder of my time to Rep. Courtney.
I'll yield back.
Does the gentleman yield back?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully oppose this amendment. I flew in Air Force One for 14 years while serving 3 different administrations and 3 different presidents. I've logged more hours than just about anyone I know on the current Air Force One, which is why I was intimately involved also in the task force that was assigned to design the VC-25B, specifically the medical suite, but other aspects as well. We recognized then the desperate need to modernize Air Force One, and each year that is delayed, it is becoming more expensive and more difficult to maintain the current fleet. Now, as depot times have increased, the much smaller, much less capable C-32s are being used as backup aircraft for Air Force One, creating major capability gaps. While the Secretary of the Air Force has openly testified completion of the VC-25B will not be done until 2028, and that's the best case scenario. Initially it was 2029, that's still probably the case. This interim aircraft can restore essential functions for the President and serve as a critical backup for the current and future Air Force One fleets. This committee has a duty to ensure the President can safely and securely execute his duties as Commander-in-Chief, Head of State, and Chief Executive. I strongly oppose this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to vote no on its adoption. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as a reminder for all of my colleagues, the U.S. Constitution that both members of Congress and the President swear to uphold and defend says that the President can't accept any present of any kind, whatever, from a foreign government unless Congress consents. And Congress definitely did not consent to the President's accepting a $400 million private jet from Qatar. But the President accepted it anyway, and Secretary Hegseth has ordered the Defense Department to begin converting it into an Air Force One platform. Now, that's a massive project. The entire plane must be disassembled, scrubbed for spyware, and rebuilt with hardened communications, aerial refueling, and missile defense. The Air Force chief has said it will cost almost $400 million to do, but outside experts say it could cost far more, as much as $1 billion, and could take years to finish. It's ridiculous to foot taxpayers with a potentially $1 billion bill for a jet that the President may not even use when he's in office because it will take too long to upgrade. So we're spending nearly $1 billion in taxpayer funds to retrofit a foreign gift for the President's private use. And to be clear, we don't even need this plane. We are already paying Boeing almost $4 billion to build 2 next-gen Air Force One jets that will be ready in just a few years. This is wrong on so many levels. It's wrong to accept this corruption, and it's wrong to stick taxpayers with this bill. And don't even get me started on what we should be spending that $1 billion on instead, like making sure every military family has the housing and childcare that they need. So I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to prohibit DoD from spending any taxpayer dollars on refurbishing Trump's Qatari private jet. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues that are opposed to this amendment, I'm wondering if you listened at all to what Mr. Courtney said about the process of preparing these airplanes for the use of the President. He went into detail about what it takes with the 2 aircraft that have been purchased from Boeing and that are now under construction, so that they are prepared, including, I might point out, the necessary medical facilities that were raised by our colleague. All of that is part of the process that Boeing is going through now to prepare those 2 jets. Is it 2028 or is it 2029? But Mr. Courtney pointed out that this is complex, and it is absolutely necessary for security purposes and for a mobile command post for all purposes of government, the military being but one. And now we come to this new Qatari plane, and we seem to be in the process of just waving aside all of those requirements, all of the work that is necessary and ongoing for the 2 Boeing jets, and somehow believing that we can just wave a magic wand and voila, the Qatari jet will be ready in a couple of years, not in 2028 or 29, but I don't know, maybe in 27 or 26. How can that be? How can it be? Is there something that will not be done, or is there just everything that will not be done? I suppose we'll change the interior and paint it gold and call it good enough. But the security and the necessary communications and the necessary defense mechanisms and cannot possibly be done in a year and a half. It makes no sense. So why are we not supporting this amendment? Why are we not saying, well, wait a minute here, just what are we doing and why are we spending the money? I must say I'm somewhat conflicted because the money comes from the Sentinel program, which all of you know are something that I would like to see diminished, and maybe this is the only way we can get it done. But it's kind of a backhanded way of accomplishing a goal that I've set for myself for a long, long time. I'm looking at this, I'm going, oh, and by the way, the emoluments clause, which has been raised by members here, it's important. There is a reason why that's in the Constitution. And you just can't blow it aside and say, oh, not to worry, this isn't really a gift to the president. Huh? Are you kidding me? This is an airplane given to the president for his use, and he intends to use it. And after it is reconfigured and restored, it'll wind up, by his account, in his presidential library. The Emoluments Clause is really, really important, folks, because it is specifically designed to prevent corruption. But we blow it aside here, and we don't pay any attention to the Emoluments Clause, and then the issue of corruption arises. What exactly did Qatar want as it handed over this used 17-year-old plane to the president? What did they want? They want a big, beautiful building on the beach? Well, I suspect there's probably one already underway, or at least the start of one. Corruption is part of this process here that we're trying to prevent with the Emoluments Clause and with this amendment. I would really urge this committee to be smart. I know we all need to line up with some of you need to line up with the president, and you got to be on his good side, otherwise he'll primary you. Primary you over this jet? Are you kidding me? If you can't go home and argue this as a bad thing, well, I can give you some hints how you can do it. I don't know. Some days I wonder just if any of us have the courage to stand up and say, no, this is not a good idea. Listen carefully to what Mr. Courtney said about the process of making these planes fit for presidential use. With that, I suppose it's best to yield back and say this deserves a yes vote.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any further members wishing? The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Constitution is very clear that the President cannot accept gifts from foreign nations without the approval of Congress. Now, that should be enough. But in an effort to be bipartisan, I'd like to quote a few people I don't usually quote. Laura Loomer, for example, whom the President has put in charge of hiring and firing at the National Security Council. When first told of this, she said, "I'm hoping that it's not true. And I know that I'm not the only person who is a diehard Trump supporter who is concerned about whether or not this report is true." Well, Laura, it's true. Ben Shapiro blasted the president's, quote, shady behavior, saying it undermines his agenda and credibility. The conservative commentator said on his show, even if it's not criminal, bad optics, the move is political poison. Shapiro continued that if this story were about Hunter and Joe Biden, quote, conservatives would be screaming. Rand Paul, Andrew McCarthy, Eric Erickson also criticized the plan. So maybe some of these MAGA faithful will help my colleagues get back to the Constitution, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that should matter here. Why are my colleagues so quick to give up our constitutional responsibility? I don't know, but that's what you're doing if you vote against this amendment. I support this amendment because I support the Constitution. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Bendeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as a former White House ethics attorney, I have some questions about the Qatari jet. First of all, I think that the president probably ought to be filing this on his financial disclosure, potentially. Just a little free advice here. But look, let's not fool ourselves. This is a pet project, a vanity project for the president. And it's an end around the Emoluments Clause. So we've already heard from my colleague, Mr. Courtney, that this is inefficient and ineffective use of government resources. Perhaps maybe even DOJ should get a look at this. But apparently, once this jet is used, that it's going to go to the president's presidential library, which is also an interesting provision to be added to the acceptance of this foreign gift. And so let me just read an article from back in May, because this is this is all about ethics, and there are major questions about the president's ethics and corruption. This is an article in the New York Times, May 13th, or Seattle Times. Tiny company with Chinese ties announces big purchase of Trump cryptocurrency. So this is part of the larger panoply of potential or significant ethics questions. It says a struggling technology company that has ties to China and relies on TikTok made an unusual announcement this week. It had secured funding to buy as much as $300 million in Trump coin, the so-called meme coin marketed by President Trump. GD Culture Group, a publicly traded firm with a Chinese subsidiary, only has 8 employees, and its public filing show, and recorded 0 revenue last year from an e-commerce business it operates in TikTok, a China-owned video app sharing. But on Monday, GD Culture Group became the latest business with foreign ties to seize on Trump's crypto venture, which channels profits directly to the Trump family and has generated conflicts of interest that have alarmed ethics experts. Meme coins like Trump coin are a type of cryptocurrency. It's just a description. We don't need to get into all that. But this cryptocurrency, Trump coin, this issue with the president accepting a gift from Qatar, it's all part of this idea that the American people are frankly starting to get, that this administration may have some corrupt tendencies. And it's really straightforward in this case, while it's in our purview for us to take action on this jet and make sure that we support my colleague's amendment. It's improper, it certainly stinks, and let me read just another excerpt from this article. Make no mistake, these foreign entities and governments obviously want to curry favor with the president. That is the sole purpose to this transfer, said former Representative Charles Dent, Republican, Pennsylvania, who was the chair of the House Ethics Committee. This is completely out of bounds and raises all sorts of ethical, legal, and constitutional issues that must be addressed. We have an opportunity to do that today. Let's not ignore our obligations. Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any further debate on the amendment by Mr. Courtney? Seeing none, the question occurs on the amendment by Mr. Courtney. So many in favor will say aye. Aye. So many opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. A recorded vote is requested, and it will be postponed until a later time.